Good morning and welcome to today's live. Today we're going to be talking about the true purpose of our workplaces and how they have come to be and what they look like now and how they support us in our day-to-day work activities. So before we sort of jump into what our workplaces do, what I want to start with is taking you back on a little bit of a history lesson and looking at the concept of work and how we have actually come to be at work and what the concept of work looks like now. So if we go back in time a little bit and we start back at the Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution took us from working quite laboriously through to enabling us with machines to then produce more and more products in a much more efficient and manufactured way. So with that, we then stopped working in the fields and we started to work in factories and we started to produce mass production. As technology then started to transform, we started to move from being a labour force into a knowledge workforce, which meant that we were then shifting from those machines factories into our offices. Now, the concept of offices, if you think back in time, what that started to look like when we had our first offices, concepts of madmen and those sorts of things start to get conjured up. So rows and rows of desks with women typing away, sitting at these desks on their typewriters, and the men sitting around in the offices. Take that forward another couple of decades, and what we start to see is then our cubicle farms that started to arise in sort of the early 80s. If you're thinking Dilbert style, we had rows and rows and rows of cubicles with very high screens because everyone wanted to sort of protect themselves from the noise around them, and they thought that by building screens higher and higher and higher that they were actually going to insulate themselves from that noise. What we then started to do as we've moved on is what we found is that we've been able to come a long way since then, and we've been able to reduce those barriers and bring those down and create more open plan. And the reason that we were all going to a workplace to work was because the technology that we needed to actually perform our roles was only available in our workplaces. It was too big and too expensive for us to all have that in our own homes. However, as technology has continued to evolve and it's got smaller and more transportable and more affordable, we now have that ability in each and every one of our own households in the modern world. So what that has meant is that we no longer actually need to go back and work in a workplace to do our job. The reason we go to those workplaces has significantly changed. And what we want to have a look at is, well, how has that changed and why has our workplace changed and what is now that role of that workplace? So when I first started working out in an interior design role, the main brief that we were receiving was the number of offices and workstations that we needed to fit into a floor plate. So it was very much a real estate driven decision. It was so much all about property and a lease and the number of bodies that we needed to accommodate. There was no consideration for how those people needed to actually interact or how they needed to work. It was purely somewhere that they could come and sit from 9 to 5 and do the job that they needed to do. That has changed a bit in most organisations, and people are now actually seeing that our workplaces are more than just a liability on our balance sheet, that they are actually an enabler of us to do our work and perform our work. And as knowledge workers now, we can actually do our job from anywhere. So why do we actually physically go to a workplace to work? And the reason that we do that is because we need to connect and we need to collaborate and we need to communicate with our colleagues. So when we're actually coming together, we're sitting down, we're brainstorming through what it is that we need to achieve, how it is that we need to attack a particular problem. We're sharing ideas, we're innovating, and we're coming up with new ideas. And it's all about using a diversity of thinking, two brains better than one, all of those concepts around how we can bring more people together and create more robust solutions to the problems that we are facing in our modern world. So what we've seen is that while the world has actually shrunk and we're now more connected than ever, we're also more disconnected than ever as well. So our communities used to be the street in which we lived or the town that we lived in. That's no longer the case. Our communities are so much broader than that. They are actually global. So we don't need to be physically working in a location to work for a particular employer anymore. We can work from anywhere. And so we have the ability to pick and choose who we want to work for and how we want to do that. So our workplaces have actually become our communities. They are providing us with a really strong sense of that connection and that sense of belonging. And so we actually have far more choice now around who we work for and why we work for them. And so those communities are all based around a shared sense of belonging. They're around shared sense of values and experiences. And what we're actually looking at when we're looking at those things is that I'm choosing to work for this company because the people that work there believe what I believe. They see the world the way that I see the world, and I want to be part of that. I want to connect what I do as an individual and my purpose in life through to that same organisation. You know, when we've got multiple businesses that operate in the same industry, how do I decide that I want to work for company A versus company B? And it comes down to the purpose of that organisation and what they believe. And so by understanding how all of that comes to play, that's what our workplaces start to do. They start to become the communicator of all of those beliefs, and they help us connect in and create that sense of community in terms of what we do. So, you know, we're hardwired as humans for that social connection, and it's the fact that we're going to go and seek out people who do this and who see the world the way that we see it. So with that, our work lives have become far more integrated. We're taking our work home, we're bringing our whole selves to work now, and all of these boundaries are starting to get completely blurred. And we're spending more time at work than we're spending anywhere else, which means that we're spending more time with our colleagues than we're spending anywhere else. So it makes sense that we want to try and foster relationships with the people that we work with and strengthen that. We want to create our work communities, and we want to really enjoy actually going to work every day because we spend so much time there and so much time with the people that we work with. Gallup have done studies around the increase in productivity and engagement that people have when they have a best friend at work. Now, I'm not talking that they have to be your absolute bestie, but it's about having a friend at work that you feel the ability to confide in, that you can share problems with at work, and that you can mutually solve those things together. And that builds loyalty in an organisation, and that only comes through having that sense of community and that ability to connect in together. So when we have that, there are strongest social connections often our workplaces in today's modern day because we spend so much time there. And so what we want to look at is how we can work to create a workplace that actually fosters those connections to continue to be built and to be strengthened in the way that we design them. And, you know, it's about a business observing that some of these most important activities that we're doing as a business is actually that social interaction. In my career, I've been told that, you know, when people are chatting at the coffee machine and they're hanging out and they're having a chin wag, that they're actually slacking off. And what we've demonstrated through years of research is that absolute converse of that is true. One organisation has done a study in this. So a pharmaceutical company found that when one salesperson interacted 10% more with their colleagues, that their sales increased by 10%. So we've demonstrated there that by increasing connection and collaboration with each other and that ability to interact with our colleagues, that we can actually then further increase our profitability because of our productivity increases. What that same organisation also found is that when they took a coffee machine and they took it from having one coffee machine per 6 people to having one coffee machine per 120 people, that their sales increased by 20%. Which meant a $200 million increase in their sales, purely by changing how many people had access to each coffee machine. And the reason that that worked is because what we're doing is we're funneling everybody into a central location. Now, I've been trying to encourage my clients to do this for quite some time. Rather than putting T points on every floor, that we actually create a centralized kitchen or a cafe or a hub space that encourages everybody from every floor and every department to come into that space. Because when we're doing that, what we're doing is we're bringing people from different departments that potentially would never have met, from different floors who would never have met. And what we're doing is encouraging a layering of communication that's happening across boundaries within the organisation. So cross-functional boundaries are being broken down by the ability for people to communicate and connect in a much more informal setting. They're not being put into a meeting room and expected to discuss a particular topic or a situation. They're having much more informal interactions, and it's those informal interactions that start to build those relationships and they build those connections. So what we've seen that do is in our workplaces, that some of the ones that we've designed, we've seen exactly the same results happen. So Maypian, who is one of our clients, they're a HR and industrial relationships organisation. They their highest financial performance on record 6 months after they moved into their new premises. And what they contribute that to is the way that they're able to interact, the way that they were able to connect, and the way that they were able to collaborate. So we've seen firsthand the ability that having a well-designed workplace that encourages those social connections and encourages that ability for us to communicate, connect, and collaborate can actually have on the financial performance of a business. It can be really quite significant. So what I would encourage everyone to do is think about how your workplace is designed. What is the real purpose of your workplace? How is it connecting and how is it contributing to what it is that you need to do as an individual? So when you can work from anywhere, why is it that you get up every day and actually physically go into a workplace? And what I think you'll find is it's because you want that social connection, that stimulating conversation, the ability to have a chat at the coffee machine and catch up with your colleagues and work through problems collectively. We don't go to work to sit in a cubicle and actually type away on a keyboard all day. We go there because of the human interaction. So how can we create our workplaces to encourage that human interaction and keep that conversation going amongst our colleagues, and then have the ability to then actually get stuck in and perform the work that we need to perform? Because we don't want to get stuck in this idea of groupthink either. So the idea is we come together, we collaborate, we connect, we brainstorm, and we identify the activities and the actions that we need to do, and then we go away and we perform those activities and those actions, because that's how we get progress and that's how we get performance from our organizations. But we need that collaboration, that connection to get us started. So in the future, our workplaces are going to need to be somewhere that is going to be worth going to. And, what I want to see us talking about is, what does that future look like? And so that's a perfect segue into next week's topic, because what we want to do is look at creating a workplace that enables us as opposed to just hosts us. So our conversation for next week is going to be talking about what the future of the workplace looks like, and particularly after we've just been through this social experiment, when we're hoping that in the next few weeks our restrictions start to ease and we'll be able to actually all start to move back into our workplaces and really get that social connection that I think we've all been starting to crave a little bit. I know I have. I'm really starting to miss the opportunity to connect in with my team, connecting with my clients, our suppliers, everybody that we have that ability to have that face-to-face connection with. I've really been missing that. And so I'm really excited about what the future is going to hold for us, because we've been able to demonstrate that we physically can work from anywhere, but it is that social connection that we're lacking at the moment. So I'm keen to hear anyone else's thoughts on this. We've got some comments here. Atlanta said the hardest part of working from home is not seeing her colleagues each day. And I miss you guys too. It's been really hard not being able to see you guys. And whilst we have our morning huddles and our daily debriefs and we're catching up throughout the day, that physical face-to-face connection is something that we are really lacking. So I'm really looking forward to that. And Katie said she's definitely missing the face-to-face interaction of the office now as well. So I'm keen to hear if anyone else is finding the same thing. It's just been really hard, I think, having that distance and that ability not to be able to physically connect. When you're connecting in with people on a face-to-face, you're actually able to read body language. You can see different tonal voice and tonality in people's voices, and whilst you might still be communicating and showing up on the screen, it's harder to read those cues. And I think you'll also find that with the lag that happens in technology is that timing of people's voices isn't coming through, the speed at which things are happening, and the ability to read their whole body language, it's just not there. And that chemical reaction that sort of happens in your body when you are physically near each other, you're not getting that happening at the moment. So it is a challenging thing. And I think our workplaces have a huge part to play in our well-being and our ability to feel like we belong somewhere and that we contribute and we're actually doing meaningful work. And I think that's where we're going to really start to see some of these opportunities come through for us in the new world. So I'm really excited by that. If anyone's got any other last comments. Katie's asked a question here and she said, what are some of our biggest challenges shifting the mindset of execs to have more socializing in the workplace? Katie, this is probably one of the toughest conversations that I do have with different organisations, and I've actually written quite a few blogs on this, so they're on the COMUNiTI website if anyone's interested in having a look at them. But often I'm finding that executives don't value the cafe or the collaboration space. They feel that their employer obligation is purely to provide, somewhere that people can make their lunch and grab a cup of coffee and get, clean water. And whilst that is the basic requirement that we need to be looking at under a Workplace Health and Safety Act, that's actually not enabling us and physically supporting us to do the best possible work. And it's about shifting that mindset for them to understand that creating these spaces are actually going to contribute value to their organisations, that it is an intangible that I can't put my hand on my heart and say you're going to make X amount more money by doing this, but I have seen the results of it from working with so many organisations over such a long period of time, that by having these spaces and enabling people to come together, to collaborate and to connect, to build those relationships, that they really have reaped the benefits as an organisation. That people are far more connected. Information flows through the organisation much quicker because they're not constrained by process or protocol, because these things start to happen informally. I don't physically have to get up and walk down 3 flights of stairs and go and talk to Sally about what's happening. I bumped into the kitchen and go, oh, hey, I just need to chat with you about this. How are you going? This is what I need to talk to you about. So creating that opportunity to physically funnel people into those spaces. The other place that I try and do that with is eliminate multiple points of utility spaces across the floor, because many organisations go, oh, but I don't want to have to walk more than 10 steps to get to a photocopier. The intention is that you want them, A, physically active and getting up and moving around so that they aren't stuck in their chair all day, but B, you never know who they're going to bump into at the photocopier, or on the way to the photocopier, or on the way to the toilets for that matter. Steve Jobs is actually quite renowned for actually putting the bathrooms at the centre of the facility at Pixar, because it encouraged people to bump into each other, because everybody has to go to the bathroom. Now, this seems like one of the most simplest of ideas, but it works. It's about how can we ensure that people are going to run into each other and are going to connect with each other because of the interactions that they need to do by functional nature of their roles every day, and how can we then guide that behaviour to support them in getting to that space. So it's really about helping execs understand the value that they're going to get out of this by showing them some examples and some case studies, because socializing at work, it does not mean we're slacking off. It actually enables us to perform better because we're having those relationships built. We then have those informal relationships so that when I am in a meeting room, I already know Sally and I can have a conversation with her without feeling that awkward tension or feeling like I have to build some rapport with her or there's an icebreaker to get through. It just makes business so much smoother. So I hope that answered the question. I know I went on a bit of a ramble and a rant there, but if anyone else has got any questions, if I haven't answered anything that's come through this morning, I'm sorry, but please let's continue the conversation in the Community Dialogue Facebook group. If you're on Instagram Live and watching this, love you to jump over and join us on the Facebook Live group. We can have some further conversations there. I'd love to hear what the challenges are that you're experiencing at the moment, or understand what it is that you'd like to hear more about. And we'll look forward to having a chat next week and talking about what the future of the workplace looks like on the other side of our current situation. So thanks everyone for joining us, and have a great day. Bye.